So thank you again for joining us. If you haven't joined any of our Ascender events before, Ascender is a hub for entrepreneurs that offers educational programs, mentorship, expert coaching, business incubation, and more. We also have a variety of memberships at Ascender, both that works out of our workspace in its liberty, but also virtual. So please, we're gonna put some links in the chat box for you to check it out and check out Ascender's website to learn more about our programs and also the different services that we provide. Today's event is part of Ascender's educational monthly series. We do have events every month that are open, free and open to the public. We bring experts that come present, run workshops, or have real talk, just like today, about a particular topic that is relevant and pressing for entrepreneurs here in Pittsburgh, and also people who can join us, from other places. So our programs really try to engage entrepreneurs here in the city to make sure that we can connect people to so that they can learn new skills, learn new resources, and also get connected with experts so that they can learn from their lived experiences. So I just wanted, before we get started with the program, I just wanted to make sure if you haven't located the chat box, please do so that you can check some of the links that we will be sharing throughout the program. And also I wanted to let you know about our upcoming event, which will happen on Thursday, August 27th. Diamante Walker, Deputy Executive Director of the URA, will be joining us to share insights and best practices about how to lead, create shared visions, and develop equitable workspaces. So we are very excited and already looking forward to our upcoming event as well. And without further ado, I wanted to introduce today's founders, today's speaker. I wanted to say thank you very much to Jim and Ingrid for taking some time out of their busy days to joining us and to connect with everybody who's in this virtual space. Today, we are featuring Jim Gibbs. He's a native of New York, came to Pittsburgh to attend Carnegie Mellon University School of Computer Science. Jim has over 35 years of experience as a software developer and 20 years in management experience. He is the CEO and co-founder of Meter Feeder, which helps traditional and autonomous vehicles find and pay for parking with no human interaction. Our other founder, Ingrid Cook, is a Pittsburgh native and graduate of Spelman College. She is the CEO of SHzoom, a tech firm with a patent electronic repair management system. SHzoom is focused on the convergence between internet technologies, machine learning, and automotive repairs. And to help us kickstart and facilitate this lively discussion today, we have our Executive Director, Nandini Nunez, here, who joined us this afternoon, who will be facilitating the discussion today. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us, and we're really looking forward to get started.
All right, thank you, Anya, and welcome everyone. Thanks again, Ingrid and Jim. First, wake up. It's 4 o'clock, it's gray outside, you had a long day of Zoom calls, and here is another one, but this one's gonna be great. I'm already saying that, okay? So today we only have, we don't have a lot of time to talk, right? But there's so much to talk about. We received about 35 questions covering different topics that they wanna hear from Ingrid and Jim, what they think about. We won't be able to cover them all, and I also want to be mindful of some of the questions you might have here in the chat. First, please mute yourself if you haven't already. If you have any questions, please add them to the chat. Now for Ingrid and Jim, I want this to be a really good experience for the both of you, but the title of this is Real Talk, right? And I want you to be as honest as candid, but also I think it's important that we normalize saying, I don't really want to talk about that, or I don't want to get into that, and that's totally okay as well. I'm not going to give you any question based on what I know of the two of you that you'll necessarily, be totally against, but I just want you to feel comfortable and answer honestly, as I know you all already do. Okay, but we'll warm up to it, okay? So we'll start with, why did you become an entrepreneur? Oh, before I get into that, actually, because we have short amount of time, we just want to kind of like go through a bunch of them, and we'll dig in and I'll ask some follow-up questions. So just be mindful of time. I know that we can talk about entrepreneurship for hours and hours. So have that in mind. So we'll start with the softball, and it's, why did you become an entrepreneur?
So I will be very short, quick, and to the point. Thank you again for inviting me. Very happy to be here. Thank you. I see so many familiar faces here, so thank you. So here's a short of it. From as long as I could remember, I always wanted to own my own business from before high school. Upon graduation from college, I started working in corporate America. I had one employer that was intentional. Even though I was heavily recruited by other people, I knew that my goal was to save, make as much money as I possibly could in the corporate arena, save, and move forward. So I was very, very intentional, very, very intentional. It was always the plan.
Great. Jim?
That's funny. Yeah, see, me on the other hand, first of all, thanks for having me. Yeah, so I realized that I just didn't fit, right? So there was this one company that I was working for. I had been writing software longer than this man had been alive. But meanwhile, he felt as though he could talk to me however he wanted to, just because, you know, I may have a little bit more of a specific chemical in my skin. But nevertheless, it was just one of those things where people weren't just not taking me seriously. So that's one aspect, is, you know, essentially being unhireable. But then the bigger vision is that we got some Black Wall Street love over here, right? There's a lot of people who are looking up to me from a software development, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, and yeah, even in Pittsburgh, we just need more success stories, right? So yeah, that's why I'm an entrepreneur. That's
great. And so, kind of we're still warming up, okay? The next thing is, when you're an entrepreneur, more often than not, you're starting on your own, right? And that has its benefits because you're your own boss, you figure it out, but that also has its challenges. So one of the questions that we received was, you know, as a solo founder, what are the benefits of that? What were some of the pitfalls? How did you handle that? But think about maybe the first couple years.
Ingrid? Me?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. So yeah, my co-founder, we've been working together for the past 20 years. So it's like, it wasn't so much of a solo thing, but yeah, it was building tech. Like, that's where we were stuck on, right? So it's like we had one brain saying, hey, if we build it, they will come. And then we came to the unfortunate conclusion that we actually had to learn how to speak to people. And that's the point where, you know, having another person in the room to say, hey, you really need to get to the point where you need to start making money.
Mm-hmm. I think that was Kit for me. Kit's like, Ingrid, get a check. Get a check. Get a check. And that's what Craig, he's one of our lead advisors. Get a check. Get a check. Get a check. What was the question again now? What was the question?
This is a discussion, you know, it's like talking to friends. It's a tree branch of conversation, right?
Being solo, I think.
Entrepreneur.
Yeah, solo. Starting off solo is hard. It's very, very difficult. Relationship building is key. Money is important, but even with money, it only gets you but so far. Like, you need a team. Boy, things are just so much easier with a team. But what I found was the best teams are not necessarily the most skilled. Skill is important. I have to know the basics, but having that motivational fit, even now, post COVID, or I don't even know if we're not post COVID, in the midst of this pandemic, with the remote working, having that motivational fit is so important, and it takes the development over time. Just with the customers, everything develops over time. But whether you're talking team, customers, mentors, supporters, I cannot express enough the importance of starting now to build those relationships with the people that you want. And what I found is, it's the most successful people who are so willing to talk to you. And I'm looking at quite a few of them right now on this. Like, they took time, but to be a founder, you have to have this level of boldness where you can't assume that people know what you need. So I made it a point. Everywhere I went, I let people know what I did, what I needed, I did it in a confident way. And I always did it at every single opportunity. I'm kind of missing that right now with this. I find myself Zooming with the same groups of people.
So let's dive into that for 1 second, because one of the questions we received was, how do you get a mentor? And when we say things like, you just got to be confident and you just got to go, like, we've all heard that. We all know that that's true. But when you're in that room or now in this virtual space, the actual step of how do you do that, what does that look like? So can you give maybe 1 or 2 specific examples of what you've done to bring mentors in or get people invested in you?
I'm authentic. Like, this is called real talk, which I was telling Anya. I said I turned down a couple of events because it took too much preparation for me to get on the stage, the virtual stage, and prepare. This is real talk, right? And that's how you get mentors. You are your authentic self. You talk, you let them know what you're doing, but you find out about them. So my thing is ask questions, especially if you've done your homework and you were intentional about going to a specific person. People love to feel good about themselves, right? And people feel good about themselves when you ask them to share their expertise with you. What we have to, and I'm glad, Jim, you brought up, Black Wall Street. I don't know how many of you guys know what that is, but what's interesting is you got to have that boldness. You have to be, I've talked to people, who my first testers were? They were out of Australia. They just happened to be at a convention that I was at. I use them as a test. Being able to be bold, regardless of what they look like, at the end of the day, we're all human, and we all have the need to be needed, appreciated, like tapping into those things in an authentic way, not necessarily about what they can do for you, but get as much information as you possibly can from them that they're willing to share. And when you're authentic about it and you follow up, you'd be surprised. I've never asked for, if I didn't get anything, it's because I didn't ask. And you can never grow weary of asking. And you'd be surprised how many people are willing to help you. When people come to me and say, Ingrid, can I get 10 minutes or 15 minutes of your time? Can you help me with this? Yeah, of course. I mean, if that's my area of expertise, then it's going to be a no-brainer for me. I can talk all day about it, So I think tapping into those and not being fearful. You can't be a great founder and be fearful at the same time.
Jim, what do you think?
Learn how to present what it is that you do succinctly, right? So if you have the ability to say, like, one of the greatest pitches that I had was actually in an elevator to an investor, and actually going up the elevator, it was 3 floors, and by the time we got to the top floor, he knew what I did, gave me his business card, and talked about how he's interested in investing, right? So if you have the ability to succinctly tell what it is, what you do, it'll be so much easier for folks to actually want to get behind you. Added bonus, if you're like, if all of a sudden I'm like looking at Ingrid and she's popping up everywhere and she's hustling and always working, like, clearly those are the people that you want to help. But folks who are like, I need help, and then they come up with a bunch of excuses why they can't do it. Those are the people who do not get help. Yes,
I think that, you know what? I don't know if you pick your customers like that, but there are some customers, like, I was just reading the book Why. If you haven't, I'm still reading it, but Why by Simon Sinek. I'll put it in the chat. But it talked about choosing who you decide to do business with, because, like, knowing what you do is one thing, but knowing why you do it is another thing. And being able to understand your why. That's why our motto is drive safe. That's our product. And spread love, because that's me, right? It's that vision that crosses over from your personal to your business, but being able to understand that why. And if your customer base, like, I walked into a room to present to a customer, and I knew immediately that our whys didn't line up. Like, there's no love there, right? I mean, and they needed our product. They needed it. But, like, you choose.
So at its core, you know, if no one, most of the people I think know you, Ingrid, and know you, Jim. You know, there's podcasts about you, there are articles about you. You're really, really present online, and you exude this confidence. And sometimes when you're starting off, especially when you're trying to figure out even what your full product is going to look like, that confidence isn't always as natural, but very necessary for an entrepreneur. And I wonder if there was ever a time when you were starting where you were like, I'm going to go to the bathroom, I'm going to psych myself up. Like, I got this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to talk to one person and then take a break because I'm sweating. How did you get there?
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the thing. Like, knowing what you're presenting, it feels like you've done your homework, right? I was that kid in school who like didn't really talk to anybody, but at the same time, I knew that when I turned in my homework assignment, it was good, right? So when you, that feeling that you're like, hey, what do you do? This is what I do. Huh, that's interesting, right? Flexing that muscle is essentially what helped me go from the kid who really wasn't talking about anything, or like dealing with people buried in Ween Hall at Carnegie Mellon University, to running a startup and having to go and, you know, continuously just help people understand the future.
Mm-hmm.
That's essentially my goal, right? Is to help people understand, you know, my vision of the future and why I'm going to be successful.
What do you think, Ingrid? How did you get to, you know, this ball of energy that you are?
That's funny. More and more people are using that word to describe me. I don't know. I'm starting to wonder if that's a good thing or not.
That's totally a good thing.
But like, I do this. It's funny. My interns from CMU and Pitt, and Elaine is on. Shout out to Elaine. She's one of our team members. What Jim said, he's very confident. What was that last sentence, Jim? It was, what was the last, you said, I will, like, knowing.
Yeah, like knowing what my vision is, and helping people understand like what I'm doing, and so I could be successful. So
yes, and you said I will be successful. I am successful. I am. I think knowing that piece, making it present to yourself, because here it is. Until you convince yourself that you are capable, no one else will believe you, right? So sometimes I don't know how, but I have a vision and I have no doubt in my mind, zero, zilch, nada, that it will transpire. I may not be able to say when or exactly how or who's going to be involved, but there's zero doubt, right? And zero fear. When you have zero doubt and zero fear, you will go out. And I'm a big proponent of like the power of the unseen. Like, things happen every time. You will have moments where you will want to give up, and and shout out to Ascender. Being in a group, granted now we're not there, but being in a group, like, for a long time when I was working alone, I would go on these roller coaster rides thinking, am I doing the right thing? Should I be, should I not? But then being around other like-minded entrepreneurs in the space that we're at there, it showed me, like, this is just part of, like, this is how it is. You have up moments, just like life. You have moments where you're like, man, all my customers called me. They're excited about my product. Or anybody called me back, or someone visited my site, or someone returned my email. And then you have just like moments like, what the hell am I doing? Like, is this really for me? Maybe I should just go back and get a job, you know? So you have to have not just confidence in, it starts with you. It starts in what you believe about yourself. And as a Black woman, and I don't know how many Black women are on this call, as a Black woman in an industry dominated by middle-aged white men, right? I tell myself, it's so, and it goes back to relationship building, right? It's so very important to connect from the inside out. And I know that sounds very cliche, but it's not, because everybody that I've met, some on this call, some in my company in the business, it's always been like, tell me about you. Like, people become interested in you because you become interested in them. Actually, it's usually SHzoom is kind of, I'm so letting them talk about themselves that they're like, oh my goodness, I spent all this time talking. Now these are potential customers. Well, tell me about what you do. Then it's like, I'm no salesperson. I'm Ingrid, and I'm learning about this new person that I just met. And oh, they just asked me about SHzoom. You know, so that is, if you can master that, it's so powerful, because then it doesn't matter. It does matter in a sense, but when it comes down to the customers that you want to be your customers, you want those people who are excited not about just your product, but excited to support you as the person that you are. And I am unapologetically who I am. And they knew, like, by opening up the discussion and getting to know them, like, they get to know me. Like, there's an energy, for lack of, that energy is real. And it's more real in person than anything else. So I think when hopefully post-COVID, 2021, we'll be able to get back. But I'm a big proponent of being face-to-face when at all possible.
It's funny.
Oh, Jim, go ahead.
Sorry, I just think that it's funny that Ingrid said it way nicer than I normally say it. Because usually it's like I get my confidence because of stupidity. Like, I just don't know any better, right? It's like there are known knowns, there are known unknowns, and there are unknown unknowns. The unknown unknowns can't be that bad, right? Psh, whatever, come on. We've done this before. Let's go, right? So, yeah, that's a way nicer way of putting it.
Well, it's true. I mean, that's me. Yeah, that's true.
Can you tell me, you've both been in Pittsburgh for a while, but you both are also very connected outside of Pittsburgh. And what do you feel as an entrepreneur, you know, if you want to speak to as a Black entrepreneur, Pittsburgh has done well in supporting you and building your business in both, you know, both lenses. And what are some other areas you've gone to for additional help or different kind of support?
Yeah, I mean, Silicon Valley, I can essentially go on Sand Hill Road and just go, I have revenue, and then just raise money, right? But Pittsburgh is not like that. I mean, it's genuinely hard for everyone. So it's like we can't really say that it's essentially a Black thing. But one thing that I did notice is whenever you're presenting to someone, you have a certain amount of strikes, and we just happen to have one less strike, right? When you see like this 6'4", 250-pound man lumbering into your office with dreadlocks down his back, it's like, okay, strike one. And then I'm like, oh, well, I'm in charge of HR, so if I never need to fire anybody, they're leaving. So, yeah, but as far as support in Pittsburgh, we've had some very great people supporting us, but it is just a hard road. It is a very hard road because there are so many people who are used to doing things a specific way. And yeah, that's essentially what I do, is help people to understand that we're just not going away, right? There was one of our current customers, after nagging him for about 4 years, looked at me and said, huh, I gotta tell you, Jim, we thought you'd be out of business by now, right? Yeah. So whatever, I don't care. I have kids to feed, right? So I'm just going to be like, cool, let's keep on going. But do
you think that's a Pittsburgh thing, or in general? I mean, plenty of people are going, you're not going to make it. And being an entrepreneur is saying, yeah, I will.
Yeah, I mean, but there's a difference between, yeah, I will, and okay, and then having a smile on your face and seeing them like literally going to their office every single month for 4 years. You know, it's like, yeah, it's painful. And part of my goal is to make sure that the next person that shows up does not have the same issues that I'm having.
Ingrid?
So the question is reference to Pittsburgh specific, right? Pittsburgh is a whole.
So as an entrepreneur, the question is, as an entrepreneur, how has Pittsburgh supported you and helped you grow? But in what ways have you gone outside of Pittsburgh to maybe fill a gap or enhance the support you've gotten here?
So the support that I received in Pittsburgh most has been around the mentoring and the advisors being able to connect with success stories. Like my goal is to exit within the next 5 years, right? When I say exit, I mean, we're not talking about investment. I'm talking about I have a set goal target that we expect to reach, right? And I think that being able to meet, and some of the people on this call, like being able to hear their success stories and to understand, and for them to offer their advice to me, has been invaluable, right? So that, and Pittsburgh Tech, wow. So the Pittsburgh Technology Council, they've been invaluable in the sense of making introductions, not just in Pittsburgh, but internationally. I mean, we went to the UK last October, so we have opportunities there. So being able to make the connection. Now, customer-wise, I go outside. My customers are public sector. But yeah, I mean, matter of fact, Jim, I think you gave my name to someone to speak to on the thing with you. I'm kind of wavering whether or not I want to do that, because I've never seen a city, and I've lived in lots of cities, and I grew up in the Pittsburgh area, but I left when I was 17. If it weren't for my parents' health, I would not have relocated back. Well, luckily I did, because I found a fabulous man. I'm getting married, so things are good. So I am like here to stay. Like I'm here now, right? But my point is, I had no desire to be here in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, it talks a good game, and I you said real talk. It presents itself well, but when you look at the data, when you look at the number, when you look at the economic disparity between the races here in Pittsburgh, right? That's a whole different type of support. When I go to meetings that they say, well, the goal is to have X percentage of minority contracts, and then I ask what I think is a simple question, like, well, how does that compare to last year? The room goes silent. They weren't even tracking the numbers. But you tell me, you know, so there's a big world out there, right? There's a big world. COVID, one of the good things about COVID is that we're not having to travel as much as we do. Your customers are worldwide. I love the relationships that I have here in Pittsburgh. I have wonderful people that I love personally who are not in my family, like, because they have been tremendous to me, and they are wonderful. But when it comes to getting that check, right, you cannot, like, my goal is to go build wealth and bring it back, right? But as far as the support to eliminate the economic despair here in Pittsburgh, to me, it's just been a bunch of talk, and I haven't seen much action. And so when I'm asked to get on stage and talk about it, I could come up, and I've been keeping logs of possible solutions, because I'm a big proponent. Never come to the table with a problem if you don't have solutions. But if I take time out to prepare and discuss these, and there are no decision makers in the room who care about it, who truly care about it. When I say truly care about it, care equals change. It's like, if I say I'm going to build a $100 million business, you want to see that you want to see that data. You're going to want to, you expect to see some progress. I just feel like I've only been back in Pittsburgh for a few years, but I hear a lot, but I don't see a lot. And that's, it's sad, because there's a lot of talent out there. But do not let that hold you back. Whoever's listening, don't let it hold you back.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And that you got to keep pushing forward, but it's true. It's, you know, it's not mutually exclusive. We can recognize our strengths, but we also need to be honest with our weaknesses. And I definitely seen that here in Pittsburgh in the way you describe both Ingrid and Jim.
Yeah.
Jim, I feel like you have either a smart comment or something.
I'm just laughing because I remember how I actually got to Pittsburgh, right? I came to Sleeping Bag Weekend, Carnegie Mellon, and they actually got a bunch of Black people from Pitt to have a party at CMU, so that I would be like, oh, look at all this diversity. And then, you know, yeah, it was under false pretenses, but nevertheless, Can we be doing better? Absolutely. But I think the best way to do it is similar to what Ingrid was saying, is we need success stories, right? So if all of a sudden, you know, Ingrid exits $1 billion exit, Jim exits $1 billion exit, okay, cool. Now we're going to be taken seriously. And then it's going to change a lot, right? And even if that happens, right, then we will personally have the ability to fix some of the deep-rooted issues that we see, right? I mean, I appreciate when people say, oh, you're going through a hard time. I get it, but no one knows how hard it is except for me, right? Like my problems. No one knows how hard Ingrid's problems is except for Ingrid. So, you know, once we do what we do, yeah, we are here to fix those problems once we exit.
I did thank you. I did want to kind of touch on one of Camille's who's in their question, and to tee it up, what I've noticed, and maybe Jim, coming from New York City, you probably feel the same, and Ingrid as well, and those on the call, but sometimes people think that once you bring someone who's a person of color or whoever on a board, they've checked a box and like, we're good, we're like diverse. And it's this really weird line of tokenism that happens here in Pittsburgh and in other places as well. And so my question is, did you ever feel, or Camille's question is, did you ever feel like you've been tokenized in Pittsburgh? And two, how have you, there's an internal like validation. Am I being picked? Am I being called on because I actually bring value, or because I am the most accessible person for someone to maybe check a box?
Oh man, can I go first? Mine's gonna be very short. And it goes back to the beginning. I know I bring value. See, you cannot, there are things that, what you know, no one can take that away. So whether or not I get selected for something or not, like funding, like the spirit, that's a whole nother thing. I just decided to make that's, when you reach a roadblock, you do what you have to do to get over it. That's a sign of a good founder, okay? But you have to know that you bring value, whether or not, and tokenized, heck, I could argue that I've been tokenized my whole life. I mean, I'm generally always the only Black person in many of the rooms that I sit in. I mean, and that's something that is so funny that one of my colleagues, we have a call tomorrow. He's like, Ingrid, I just want to sit down and talk. I've been having a lot of race relations. I think everybody's reading that book, White Fragility, and part of it ends with open up the conversation. So I've had a lot of my friends come and say, oh, Ingrid, can we have a conversation? And I forget my point. My point is, no. The whole idea is you got to know that you bring value, A, and B, if you are like me, where you are genuinely interested in the person to begin with. Like, there are oftentimes I sit in a room, and like I'm so engrossed in what we're talking about that like, if you're authentic, I would say no. But being the only Black is the story of my life. I mean, honestly, I mean, it's been everywhere. I can tell you stories. But go ahead.
That's hilarious, because usually that's the part where I start getting nervous, right? So if I'm working somewhere and all of a sudden I hire another Black person, I'm like, well, they get ready to fire me. So, but seriously, the idea is, you know, I've had this discussion, you know, with Black YC founders, with actually I had this conversation literally with Charles Hudson last week on Thursday, and we were talking about how, you know, tokenization, we're starting to realize that people are investing more in Black founders. Should we be like, no, you didn't find our value before?
Oh, no.
You know what I mean? I'm just like, nope. Because if they understand that I'm working 10 times as hard as anyone that they know, hopefully when the next person shows up, they're like, oh, this person probably works. I mean, pattern match. They're probably going to work around the same amount as Jim, right? And that's all we've been trying to say, is give us a chance, right? And again, you know, it's like, if I get that money, one of the things I do is I go to Cocopreneur and be like, hey, where am I spending this money? And then suddenly, you know, like, they have more money. They have more money. They hire more people. They hire more people, then there's less crime. You know, like there's, you know, all of these things get solved when there's options, right? When we have the ability to continuously pay our rent, when we have the ability to, you know, care for our families and care for the children, then, you know, people don't understand that, you know, when, for example, when I got my minority owned certification, they were like, oh, well, what kind of truck do you have? Truck? What are you talking about? They're like, oh, well, you're a black man that's getting your minority owned certification, so clearly you must be in construction. Like, no, I'm not in construction. I'm a software developer. You know, until we normalize us being entrepreneurs, being in tech, being CEOs, then, you know, of course we're going to be continuously underestimated, which is what this whole thing is about. So if I'm being seen as a token, if I'm being seen as being the nice guy, fine, that's cool, but realize that everyone who comes after me is going to have a little bit easier of a time because of the things that I'm doing right now.
Absolutely. Just like we're living off the backs of other people that came before us. I mean, and that's what it's about. So even if you're in a situation where you truly are tokenized, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but
Yeah.
I'm just, then you still use that to your advantage for the bigger picture.
My great
for the bigger
grandparents
goal.
my great grandparents had me out there picking beans, right? Yeah, cool. My father had me out there I've been painting, interior and exterior painting, like since I was 12, right? I'm at Carnegie Mellon University, don't have enough money for my books. I'm outside the O breakdancing so I can make some money so that I could go and buy my books. You know what I mean? And it's like people, they're just like, oh, I didn't have a hard time at Carnegie Mellon. It's like, well, you had money.
Yeah, exactly.
You knew where your next meal was coming from, right? So like, if you're not thinking about that stuff, then it's hard to understand the shoes that we put on every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of speaking to, and it's not exactly the same, but we are in the middle of a pandemic. You know, a lot of people are struggling in different levels, and people have certain advantages over others because of some, you know, the access to resources that they have. But can you tell me a little bit about how the pandemic has impacted your business?
Oh, well, we had to cancel. We were slated to go out for on-site training right before we had the quarantine, and everything, we pivoted. I mean, we had to. There was no other choice. So we created, and again, partnerships, like the partnerships with CMU and Pitt specifically. There's no way, like they offered us 5 people over the summer. There's no way we would have finished. We finished a library of e-courses for each. Our system has 7 different user types. So to have a library for each user type was a huge project. There's no way that I could have done that without the partnership of CMU and Pitt, and Elaine, who's on the call, and the other interns that came to work. So we shifted that way. Working in the public sector, we need to make sure we had to be relevant. So we shifted the way that we marketed our product. We knew people could use it from home, but now, boy, we definitely, we harped on it. So we changed how we marketed. I changed how I hired people. Being qualified was not good enough. You had to also be good. I had to understand your why, like what makes you get up out of bed, what motivates you. That motivational fit became extra important. And those are the major changes. Actually, honestly, it's saving us a crap load of money with not having to travel, because people are becoming more acclimated to Zooms.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it for me.
What about you, Jim?
Yeah. So 95% of the parking revenue, like parking payments, just went away overnight, right? So to give you an idea, the Pittsburgh Parking Authority generally did about $4.5 to $4.7 worth of revenue per month. And in April, they did about 100,000. So yeah, and by the way, they are the biggest taxpayer in Pittsburgh. So that's one of the reasons why Pittsburgh is kind of like their antennas are going up and trying to figure out what can we do. And we saw similar numbers in our revenue. So yeah, while we do realize that the future of parking, you know, we're still bullish on parking payment. Like eventually people are going to be on the road, whether they're customers or their fleets. We also found a huge opportunity with the amount of parking data that we were getting. When we integrate with a ton of vehicle companies, vehicle manufacturers, and so on and so forth. So we're getting about 11 million unique vehicles sending us latitude, longitude, engine state, and timestamp. So we can take that data and essentially predict where available parking is going to be with about 85% accuracy. And it is that's you know, kind of gotten people excited about meter feeder again. So yeah, at the end of the day, you know, real talk, we make money every time someone turns their car on so that they can find parking, and every time they turn their car off so that they can pay for parking.
That's great. Well, can you describe your repivoting, your reinforcing other aspects that maybe you didn't before with such an uncertain future of how long this is going to be? What goalposts are you using as you plan for the future, if at all?
Sure. I mean, our goalposts, essentially, we realize that we're bad at telling the future, because if we did, then we wouldn't have based our entire company off of people going to work. So with that being said, you know, we essentially built everything around what's most likely to happen. And it's like, is everyone going to move out of urban hubs? Is everyone going to stay home forever, right? Just cocoon forever, right? And we built business models with our current raw materials that we have, right? We built business models so that we can quickly react to whatever comes our way. And that's one of the great parts about being a builder and being surrounded with builders. So that's essentially our goalpost, is to watch what happens and see how people behave, and then continue to grow from there.
And you know, I was in a call earlier today, and sometimes you hear something, you go, duh, why didn't I think of this? Where there are people whose job is to look into the potential future, even if it's uncertain. So someone was saying, like, he subscribes to McKinsey or some other kind of businesses who just focus on what might be the possibility for the future. And that can help, instead of you in your office or wherever you are, can help you formulate, well, what are the options? Ingrid, do you have any specific goalposts that you're looking at?
Using our customers to get more customers. So we're both in public sector. So we support, crazy enough, through these uncertain times, like we have whole entire police departments using our mobile app and web portal to log crashes and incidents. Like, those aren't going away. Crashes are going to happen. They're happening, especially patrol vehicle, light duty vehicles in the public sector. So being able to, this is new to me, being in that arena of this new product launch, Uptime. However, what I'm learning is that they plan out their fiscal year. I'm learning about, like you were talking, I don't know, Jim, if you were on the call the other day, but they talked about their R&D credits. I'm started thinking about using their R&D credits, research and development credits available. Like, this is, like, I'm learning. So one real talk is, like, you're not expected to know it all. There's so much I don't know. That's why I go back to relationship building. If you surround yourself around the right people, I always try to get around people who I know knows a lot, or a lot smarter than I am, especially in the specific areas that I need to make business successful. So R&D is something that we're looking into. I think that's a smart move. Me personally, we're using our existing customer base in the public sector to bring on more folks. But as far as predicting the future, no, there's it's impossible to do that. I think that it's helpful for us that we have a product that still is valued. Knowing the customer better than you know your competitors has been a tremendous plus for me personally. Like my customers those are the guys that help me get to where I'm hoping to go. And those are the people. I urge anyone who's thinking about building a business, or you're already in that seat, spend more time with potential customers. Know who your target market is. Even if this is just an idea, go out and find those people. Don't be shy. Talk to them. Figure out what they like about your idea, what they don't like about your idea. How much I found out that, man, they're willing to pay a lot more than what I thought I was going to get, right? I didn't even have an idea. I'm glad I cut my mouth shut, right? So the thing is, like you've got to get out there and talk. I mean, going back to the whole support groups are great, and you need support personally and professionally. But talk to the people who are it's gonna be your users, your customers that are gonna make or break you. Those are the people that you should be trying to get friendly with, not, I mean, those are the people you wanna know the best, so.
I was going to say, what about, unless Jim, you wanted to say something, but a lot of the questions that we typically get, especially for a real talk, is about investment. You know, how much, especially during this time, do you spend on that? And what is that process like, as honestly from the entrepreneur experience?
Sure. So that's funny. In as real as possible, right? Don't need the money. If you don't need the money, it's more likely to come, right? If you are able to show that even in this terrible time, that you are going to survive, and not only survive, but thrive, then that is when people start paying attention and are willing to give you money.
Yep.
Right? Not, oh, well, you know, I'm late on my rent payment, so I think I better go and raise some money. Like, that's a terrible reason to raise money. If you're like, hey, we're trying to quarter this $130 billion market. Okay. All right. So how have you grown from, oh, I got LOIs and MOUs and 10X this and so on and so forth. Like, how many people are on your team? 4. So you want to hire more people? I need to hire more people. Cool. And it's like, the investors don't have to think very hard in order to understand how you find success, right? And if you can take away that, close your eyes and imagine, right? The less they have to imagine, the more likely they are to invest. So, yeah.
And that's, you know, that was one of the misconceptions I had when I came to Ascender, being around entrepreneurs for the first time, was that I was under the impression, like no one talked about their business. Everybody was talking about raising funds, like, oh, and it was almost like people were celebrated not on the actual business success. What they were celebrating is, oh, such and such just closed a $30 million round or a $100,000 round or and so for a minute, I almost got caught up in that, where I'm like, my success is based off the money that I raise. Well, then I sat in with an attorney on being on the other end. I sat in on the investor end. I learned those term sheets, and I said, you know what? I need to be on the other end of the table. I need to figure out a way to build enough business so that I can go and give those terms. My terms would be a lot nicer than some of the terms that are out there right now. Investors add complexity. I'm on my way to, hopefully, Jim, we may get to the point where we may need to. But when you get to that point where you need to, yes, it comes easier, but more importantly, you have more negotiable terms on your end.
Right.
Because people expect, I'll never forget, and this was through the Pittsburgh Tech Council, and I mean, I give them hats off. I mean, you just got to ask. But they were going to New York on this investor trip, and I applied to go, and I went. Had never gone to New York, these big time, I've gone to New York, but not for investment trips, right? So I'm sitting at these firms, went to firm after firm after firm, and I remember one of the guys were really interested, and he was like, well, what's your you know, what's your plan? Like, how much you want to exit for? And I said 10 million. Oh my goodness. You know what? He looked over at me. He said, shh, Ingrid, don't ever repeat that again. These guys want to 10x their money. $1 billion exit is preferable. Nothing less than 100 million. That's when, and as a Black woman, and that's where that whole, like those numbers, if I went home and told my parents, they were like, what? You know, they were like, yeah, I mean, I was thinking $10 million is great. But sitting at these tables where there's another table I was sitting at recently, they said, oh, we're going to give $1 billion toward ending systemic racism. I'm like, those numbers are just like, but now I look, you know what I realized? Getting that seat at the table and listening to that, I realized that there is no shortage of money. There's no shortage of money. Like there's enough to go around 1 billion times, right? But you got to get out there. You got to get out there because there are people who have far less successful business models than me who are making far more than me, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no shortage.
I mean, one of the things I always bring up is that one startup called Yo, where you like open up your app, you push a button, and it sends your friends just a text message that says Yo. Yeah, he raised like $5 million in a weekend, right? So people can reach out to me if they want to like dig in a little bit deeper, but yeah, you're absolutely right. There's plenty of money out there, and when people are like, yeah, we're going to put in $1 billion for systemic racism, I was like, how much is that going to entrepreneurship, right? Or are they just going to spend a whole bunch of money on folks being taught how to not be obnoxiously offensive? Right? I mean, I had one. If you go to google.com and search for Transformers 2 racism and click on images, that transformer is what my manager bought me for real, legitimate, gold tooth, everything, and turns around and says, I was like, I can't take this. They were like, oh, why not? It's perfect. I was like, all right, cool, right? So yeah, are we going to work with the person who just doesn't know any better? Or are you going to invest in me so I can build wealth for myself, my family, my community, right? So yeah.
Wow. Well, how would you say, you know, I know, Jim, you mentioned that first you just need to build it and so that investors have to do less imagining, but still people say, well, I've built something. How do I get in front of investors? What is, you know, is it because of the network? Where do you reach out? How do you foster those relationships?
I mean, you're on this call with all these people who have all these connections. So, I mean, like literally just put it in group chat and say that you're looking for help, right? Yeah, like seriously, everywhere. I mean, I was shocked at how many family offices were in Pittsburgh. I mean, I had never heard of any of these names before. But yeah, if you're looking for investment, the best thing that you can do is speak to someone who has raised money recently. Oh my goodness gracious. Because, you know, like when you're talking to someone who's like, and Pittsburgh is really bad at this, there are investors who like invested in a company in like 97 and they didn't actually invest. They did the books for a startup, you know, and okay, you did the books for 4 systems. Okay, great. You made some money. Now you're like, you know, not investing anything. That's great. But then they drag you along and it's like they have that feeling that they're helping you. And that's terrible. That's death to the startup because they're sitting here trying to impress you in order to hopefully get some money from you. And that is the absolute wrong way to do it. And if they did actually offer you any money, it would be at the worst terms possible. So with that being said, there's Ascender, there's Startup Boost, which applications are opening soon. There are, you know, there's all these things, there's all these people who have, you know, raised money, like, you know, Ryan Green, there's 5th Season, there's all these people who have just raised money. And yeah, just grab some time, talk to them. Don't say pick your brain, because that sounds like zombies, but say, hey, I'm thinking about trying to raise a little bit of money soon. What do I do?
Or virtual coffee is a thing now.
Virtual coffee is a thing.
I've had like 5 invites. Oh, can we do virtual coffee? I was like, oh, I guess that's the thing now. Virtual coffee. Funny. Like they're 15-minute discussions. And I'm like, okay, that works too.
Virtual Swedish fish.
But can I go back to raising money? This is what, for the people who are on the call right now, one of the questions, I know we're running out of time and we didn't get to, or we're out of time, but one of the things, what would we have done differently? What I personally would have done differently is, instead of going to investors, I would have gone to potential customers, right? Because what I'm learning now is, even if you don't have a product, but you just have an idea, if that idea truly solves a pain point for your target market, they'll be willing to sign a contract and then wait for you to build it. I had no idea. Are you kidding me? Wow. Then they fund your project. I mean, then that's your money. You're not answering to investors calling you. And from what I hear from the people that I've talked to who got investment money, it's like, if you get in the bed with the wrong people, you may very well be out of your whole company to begin with. I mean, it is what it is. So I would offer you the advice to use the product, because you build more confident. When people that's what got me over the humps, is when customers are like, yeah, I like it. Oh, Ingrid, this is great. Oh, that's what does it. I mean, those are the things. And if you really truly have something of value, people are going to pay you for it. And then when they start paying you for it, then go for investment. If you want to grow fast, then go for it. But
yeah.
I made the mistake of not doing that first, and so I spent a lot of my own money because I didn't get investment. Like, I mean, what do we, 2% of the funding investors or something like that?
1%.
Okay. Somebody said this call was too real.
That's
Kim,
great.
Amazing Kim. Yeah. Shout out to Gender Reveals.
So I really appreciated the two of you. I think we could have kept going, and maybe if you wouldn't, maybe we'll re-invite you in and touch on some of the other questions. And this is our first Real Talk event. Kudos to the team for putting this together, and thank you, Ingrid and Jim.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Honored.
We want to continue this, and I think honest conversation about the reality is the only way we can improve and help each other out. So thank you so much. Thank you all for coming and spending your time today with us. And I'm gonna give it to Anya because she's running the show here.
Excellent. Glad that keeping it real did not go wrong.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to echo Nadilia as well. Thank you so much to Ingrid and Jim again for giving us all of this insights and enlightenment. And I already feel like I got my second wind already of the day, just from hearing you guys talk. So thank you so much for being honest, for being authentic. I think we just from being part of the Pittsburgh entrepreneurial community, it's really great to have you both be leaders too in the community. So I'm happy that you decided to join us. And we put the links to connect with Jim and Ingrid in the chat box. So make sure that you connect with them. The conversation continues, and hopefully more action too. And join us for our upcoming event on the 27th. And thank you again, and have a good afternoon, everybody.